All right. Hey friends, Dawson here. I have watched 11 hours of Matthew McConaughey so that you don't have to. And today we're covering his objective personality type because even though the Myers-Briggs says that this is the most common personality type in existence, they're nowhere to be found on the interwebs. So it's time to download what is this type actually doing. And out of every one of this type that Ops has on file, this one seems to have branched out the most. He's undergone kind of the most changes, been on a little bit of a hero's journey of his own, and he happens to have a lot of great in-depth interviews. As well, Dave also did a great Q&A, which you can find over on the members library, covering darkness and the Uvalde tragedy, so it's a really good one to watch. But otherwise, let's jump into the typing. All right. Now I know you can't just say it just once now, but you know him as being a romantic comedy heartthrob actor, and he plays in movies such as The Wolf of Wall Street and probably some others. I've never seen a McConaughey movie, but I hear they're great. And he's known for having a pretty cool vibe about him. So, diving into some context here, if you are going to type Matthew McConaughey, I would say that his type is rather straightforward. I think you're going to be able to see a lot of these parts here. Now, there are going to be some that are a little bit trickier, that being maybe DI versus DE. Is he self? Is he tribe? Is he thinking? Is he feeling? I don't know. Those kind of get jumbled. He seems to have a good balance on those. But for the most part, a lot of his parts will come naturally. Now, according to the greater MBTI community, several hundred people have typed Matthew McConaughey as being either an ENFJ or an ESTP. Now, this time, I don't really blame him, because as I'm looking at Matthew McConaughey, trying to get a visual bias here, I'm noticing that he has a familiar look to him. My childhood best friend has this look to him that I've seen across different people over the years, and it seems to cluster in celebrities that have FE and TI. For one, my childhood best friend reminds me of Charlie, the Charisma on Command guy. And as well, he also reminds me of the vampire guy, Robert Pattinson. It's a sort of expression. It's the smile and the jawline that I've noticed with those with FE and TI. And I happen to notice these same expressions with Matthew McConaughey here. Even though I can't really recognize most of his features, I'm like, I don't really know what this type is. My bias is he probably has FE and TI somewhere in the stack. That is just my starting bias. So now the first coin that we're going to start off with is going to be observer versus decider. I know we're tackling the big one first because Matthew McConaughey wrote a book called Green Lights. And so it raises the question, why is he writing a book? What is this lesson that he wants to give out to the world? What has he learned and what has he gathered and what does he want everyone else to know about? This is going to be what's important to him. So it raises the question, is this going to be an information and pathways conversation, or is this going to be a decisions and judgments conversation? And now the title might give it away, but let's hear from Matthew himself on how he defines green lights.
What is by definition a green light?
Being cool to your future self. Making choices we can engineer green lights, and then sometimes they're mystical. We love green lights. They're the left lane of life. A speed limit, window down, T-top open, cruising. We got our direction and a full tank of gas. Let's roll. We love them. We're in the right line at the supermarket. We're in the flow, as it's called, right? Things are working out. Sometimes we're not even conscious of it. We were just in line and on time. Yes is the answer, and we're choosing the right things. But it's investments that we make, choices we make. I noticed in writing the book that a lot of successes I had were engineered by habits and choices I made that had consistency. That's what I call it, a science to satisfaction. I believe there is a science to satisfaction. I noticed what I was eating, who I was hanging out with, when I was going to bed, how I was approaching the day. There were consistencies that led to times in my life where I had more joy and more success, was catching more green lights. I also noticed times where I was in a rut through my journals of, you veered from these tried and true habits that you had that were leading to success and giving you more green lights. Ooh, let's get back in our lane over here. And sure enough, more success and green lights I started to create for myself. We also get those mystical green lights where we're just, there's no reason, but there's a lot of rhyme. We met the right person, and damn it, if we'd have, left 5 minutes later or 30 seconds earlier, we might not have met them. They might not be married with the family we have now, or might not have got that job if we wouldn't have been just right there on that time, crossing that person, going through that door as they were coming out. So true. Those don't make any sense at the time, but when you look back, they connect the dots to right where we are.
Okay, well, that's a little bit different. I'm used to gathering Jim Carrey, Kristen Stewart, Sylvester Stallone, and all of them are having the you-me conversation. Well, me and my perspective, and then maybe I wasn't seen in them, and they're better than me, and their perspective and judgment, and I know what I want, and then wait, am I leaving everyone else behind? And I'm just not quite hearing the same conversation here. This isn't a you-me conversation, but it's rather a pathways and timelines and routes and routes conversation. Like, oh, well, I was in this lane, so I need to move over to this lane. And I was going this way, and then what if that connected the dots to where I am today? And then if I hadn't been here, then I might not have met so-and-so. And so it's all these pathways and these timelines and how all these things added up to get you in the right location. That sounds like a little bit more on the information and pathways side of things. Okay, let's keep that in mind here, because if he is an observer and if he's talking about the information and the pathways, then naturally Matthew McConaughey should be able to balance out the people, the back and forth between my perspective and their perspective. He should be able to balance them out. So let's see if he can do that.
Every time I'm preaching something,
Yeah.
have to come off of that or come in after precede that with a story where I eat shit.
Yeah.
Or so the reader can stomach it. You want to,
Yeah.
so you can see me self-deprecate and tell a story where I ate shit. And then after that, you can stomach me going, so here's a lesson I learned from it.
Yes.
But don't be going straight advice across the board.
That's
People
so-
shut that thing going, shut up, quit telling me what the fuck to do.
For sure. No, that's
Did you notice this? This is something big thing on this. The person, first, second, third, I, you, we. So it's about us. You telling it first person. This is my experience. You can have an opinion, but you can't really judge me right or wrong. I'm just telling you how I experienced it. Second person's you. Now we're giving advice. We're telling you gotta watch. You're telling people what to do, right? Gotta watch that because someone likes to be told what to do. Third, the royal we. Which you got to watch that because then your shit can all sound like big platitudes. Like, what do you got or something?
You're speaking for us?
The proverbial we.
Yeah.
But the interplay of those was a real something that I got real conscious of along the way. Because if I would go into the you too much, it comes across preachy.
Definitely.
Go into the I all the time, you're going, well, it's your story, but what does that have to do with me? I don't see myself.
Right.
And if you use the proverbial we, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Big Stuff, speaking with the voice of God.
No,
saying,
Yeah, I gotta lift myself up on one page and then tear myself down the very next because people get tired of it. I gotta go back and forth with myself. And then he's also going, hey, I'm seeing all the different perspectives here. Mine, but I can't go too far into that. And then you, but then they don't want to hear me preaching. And so then we have to do the whole we, but then not too much. So we kind of have to balance out all these perspectives at once. And so he's trying to keep everything in a nice flow. And you see that he's doing it rather easily and calmly. He's not writing his book on perspectives and I and me and you and the proverbial we. That's not what he's getting serious about. Instead, he's going, I have to balance out all these things naturally so that I can write my book about the pathways and the information. You're seeing what is calm for him and what is serious for him. So Matthew McConaughey is going to be an observer. And so now that raises the question, what kind of observer is this? Is this sensory? Is this intuition? Is this OI? Is this OE? What are we seeing here? And so I happened to catch him in an interview with our favorite resident mopey ENTP, Lex Fridman. And Lex is such a good one to watch because he's going all the way out there and all of the intuition, the possibilities, the abstract, the new, the mysticism. And so it creates a good contrast to see, okay, is he the same or is he different from Matthew McConaughey? Are they speaking the same language or are they kind of missing each other and confused by each other? So how about you decide? Watch for yourself.
How much of success in life do you think is engineered and how much is mystical? How much does it differ from person to person? Because for me personally, maybe I enjoy it. Maybe I'm genetically built that way, but I exist more in the mystical. So I don't make plans. I traveled last summer in Ukraine with no plan. I just went there. No plan. I didn't know how I'm going to meet the president of the country. I didn't know anybody. And so there's no plan. There's no clear thing. You're just roaming around. And that's how I've existed in life. And there's something about giving yourself over to the flow of nature that I just enjoy. It makes life so much fun.
Did you engineer, though, I'm going to put myself in the place when you got on the plane to go to the destination? That was an engineered choice. So getting on the plane, that was an engineered thought with the goal in mind, but I don't know how I'm going to do it.
The choice.
Yeah.
Putting the shoes on. Yeah. But there's not a clear, it's a fog what happens after the shoes go on. So I wonder how much, for people who are successful in this world and finding what makes them truly happy and fulfilled, how much of it is engineered? How much is mystical? How much was it for you?
Well, I'll say this. Like when I went to write the book Green Lights, which is basically the last 40 years of my life, I thought that 85, 90% of my successes were going to be obviously engineered. or I could see the science, saw the habits. Here's what I did. Yep, that added up. Got the solution, got the conclusion. I was very surprised when I noticed it was probably less than 50%. And that most of the real successes of my life were when I trusted that I didn't have to define it, that I only trusted that I didn't have to go, well, what's the measurement? What's the score? This leads to what? What's next? Now it's to trust and not be, because I think I can be overly practical. And I think I can overcompensate and miss out on magic because I'm still going, wait, but are we giving enough? Are we giving enough measure and credit to actuality? Am I giving enough credit to these are the steps to take, and this is reality? I think I'm reminded when I trust, because going with the mystic, just to put yourself on the plane was the engineer, but getting there, and as you say, you roll in that mystical. It takes a lot of trust. Where do you get that courage and trust to go with your gut, your feeling?
Yeah, that engine is always there. But I think what pulls me forward in life, what makes me really grateful and fulfilled, is noticing the thing you mentioned, noticing the magic and kind of going towards it.
So you have Lex over here, who's freely and openly, no plan, all the possibilities, and mysticism is exciting and comfortable. Whereas our friend Matthew McConaughey over here ain't quite following. He is more grounded and practical. He is tied to actuality and reality. This is savior sensing. It has to have some physical basis. It has to be grounded to some degree. I can't jump forward into the mysticism without having some sense of the facts first. I can't just jump ahead without having some basis in physical reality. I can't just leave the sensor behind. So you are going to see from Matthew is that he is savior sensing. And I don't know if you were paying attention, but I was noticing some odd language being used that I don't hear too many people using. The sense of things being engineered. Like, what are we talking about here? Things being carefully and deliberately manufactured. I'm hearing outcomes and conclusions. Oh, well, wait a second. This might be SE, but I don't know. I'm starting to see that trend fall apart here. And if you're comparing him to Lex Fridman, he's not really, he's a little bit more cautious with going out with no plan and things kind of going with the flow here. He doesn't seem to be matching Lex on that end either. So, okay, if this is sensing, is this planned, calculated step by step in the sensor, or is this a spectrum gathering the sensor?
And in writing green lights, when I went back, that's a lot of the consistencies that I found that I wrote when things were going well, that I was taking time to go, can I try and bottle some science here to why things are going well? And I did find consistencies. Who I was hanging out with at night, what I was drinking, what bar I was at, what food I was drinking, how exercise, preparation for work, for school. And I found things I was like, you were really happy in this segment of your life. Let's go back and look at what you were doing. Oh, man, I had Augmentino scrolls. I was on them every day. I had some discipline where I was checking in with myself. Oh, you were going to church on Sundays. You were saying thank you, God, before you went to bed each night. You were appreciating more. You were pointing out beautiful things and not taking them for granted. And so I found a list of things. I'm like, and when I get off track, I try to remind myself, you've been slacking on some of those. I've definitely found consistencies, and I think we all have them if we just notate them along the way, that they're not by accident.
You're seeing here that he's going back to his known information. What was working? What were my consistencies? It's almost like an E-Myth style list of going, hey, if I just push all the right levers, well, what time was I waking up? When was I going to church? Was I doing this? Was I doing that? What was my social life looking like? And he's trying to press all these levers to get to the sense of success and of happiness. So one of the things that I'm starting to catch on to in life is that SI is a fundamental skill that we're all going to need to use in life. And if you can lean into it, you're going to be happier because of it, if you can actually order your life in this sort of listicle way. So just kind of a personal story for you here. I went through a really weird kind of health thing back in college. Like I was tired, I was fatigued, I was exhausted out of nowhere, like I couldn't breathe in the mornings. And now, of course, some of it might have been because I was asleep last number 2, just spinning around crazy, running 70 miles a week. So I'm sure part of it was a crash, right? But this lasted for a long time and we didn't know what was behind it. And I ended up taking 1 test that solved the problem. It was a food sensitivity test. And so that test came back, and it came back with all the things that my body was allergic to that I had no idea that I was reacting to. So this was dairy, apples, bananas, lemons, almonds, cashews, coconuts, celery, tofu. I don't eat tofu, I swear. And so eventually, after a while, I finally gave in. I started eliminating each of these one by one, getting rid of anything that I had in my diet that consisted of these things, right? And so as I'm doing so, I'm starting to notice that I'm gaining more energy. I'm starting to feel better and less groggy. And of course, that taps into my sleep last, where I'm going, anything that gives me more energy, I have to utilize. I have to have more. I have to have more energy. So I will cut out everything. I was cutting out sugar. I was cutting out everything that I might have been allergic to. I was seriously just getting rid of everything in my life. And I was starting to feel better because of it. But after a while, I still noticed that I felt rather groggy and tired after breakfast and after lunch. And so I knew that there was something still triggering that allergic reaction. But I'd looked through everything. Or so I thought. I'd missed a section. Additives. Okay, fine. I will look through each of these and figure out what they are. E40, E20, E108, E200. I'm going through all of these. Brilliant blue and silver and beta carotene. And okay, let me look through all the ingredients and make sure none of these are matching up anywhere. And so I had to go through a fine-tooth comb and see what ingredients were matching and what weren't. What was I actually taking in, even on the micro level? And then finally, I got to it. Sorbic acid. It's a preservative meant to kind of extend shelf life for certain few products. And I was using sugar-free syrup, and I thought that had done the trick. Come to find out, there's a little bit more to it. I cut that out of my diet, and immediately I felt better. I was no longer tired or groggy or glazed, and I no longer had to take a nap after every single meal. I finally felt free. And in fact, I was having a sleep last crash once every 2 weeks. Now, I have them once every 8 months. It's essentially cured me. Like, I was having these major spikes and these major crashes in energy, and now I'm just kind of cruising at a nice and even 80 miles an hour, but I'm doing a lot better, kind of maintaining an even pace. And none of that would have happened if I had never taken a fine-tooth comb and gone carefully throughout my life, tiny sensor by tiny sensor, doing the SI necessary to make my life better. So anywho, enough of that, back to Matthew McConaughey. So you are going to be seeing some of the OI going back to the same principles. And so if you are seeing OI, you should also be looking for the cross-check of demon OE, of a fear of change, a fear of something new, a fear of going with the flow.
It was on that note, I was like, what's my best advice I need to give myself right now is listen to my own damn advice.
Yeah.
And it was, followed that up with trying to live with less gravity and more backbone is a salty task.
What's that mean to you?
Trying to live lighter with less gravity, live lighter, not take certain things so seriously, but still have the principled backbone. Because as I'm getting older, we get older and the black and whites turn to gray, and then there's a great word compromise, we all say, which is such a mature thing to do. And then all of a sudden we let things slide, and everyone start going, well, change will happen. Hey, change is inevitable. Let change happen. And I'm not ready. That's part of getting old, I think, not just getting older. Yeah, it's more backbone to hold on and be principled, what I stand for, what I stand against, when it becomes easier and easier to just go with the flow. And I'm not ready to go, let's just go with the flow.
So you see that he's going back to this strong sense of principles, this backbone of sorts that he's holding on to. It almost sounds like masculine aside of me, and he's not quite ready to go with the flow. So what you're going to see from Mr. McConaughey here is that he is SI at the top. And so now we're going to be covering more of his middle functions here. And so we're asking, is Matthew McConaughey DI or DE? Is he self or is he tribe? Now, of course, these are in the middle, so he's going to be relatively balanced between them. So it's going to be a harder one to catch. But the question you should be asking yourself is, which one is coming first? Is it self or is it tribe?
What I wanted to do is when I'm acting, I'm going through, I have 5 filters between my raw expression and what you see on screen. 5. Someone else's script, someone else's character, someone else behind the camera, someone else directing, someone else editing. That's 5 filters between me and the raw expression. What wrote the book was I said, I want to get rid of some of those filters. Now, a book is one filter. It's still a written word.
Yes.
But in the ultimate is like when people do stand-up or performances or like this, we're live. This is no filter. And so that's what I wanted to do, where I could direct my own story, be the main character in my own story, edit it through my lens.
Yeah, so he has 5 perspectives that he has to filter through and go through before he can get to his own expression, to get through how he sees the world. Well, that's a little bit odd here, because I only have 3 perspectives. Me, myself, and I. And sometimes the ghostly whispers of the tribe that are secretly judging me. But for the most part, I'm already operating from my perspective, and I have to add in all the other filters in order to kind of see, oh, what should I be looking at here? So I'm not quite seeing things the same way that he is. But kind of on that same vein, how does Matthew McConaughey deal with his identity?
I wrote about in Greenlights about how, we always say, well, who are you? I want you to figure out who you are. And I try not to ask my kids that now. Well, I want you to know who you are. And a part of that who's helped me is Bob Dylan's lines like, I don't know what all this talks about who we are, man. We are all just what we create ourselves to be. And that gives me a little, oh, that's relaxing. But it's so much easier to figure out who you're not. And if you start eliminating the who I'm not, by sheer mathematics, you end up
moving toward
who more of what feeds you and who you are. And it's a hell of a lot easier thing to go, how can I get rid of some bullshit in my life than it is to go, well, how do I go to my true self?
You got to figure out who you are. So what you're going to see from Matthew McConaughey is that he loses himself, but then he finds himself again. As an observer, he's not stuck on the identity crisis. He's not going, well, I lost myself, and who's Matthew McConaughey? He's not pulling the Jim Carrey over here. But at the same time, you're still seeing that he's struggling with finding his true self. Whereas for me, I already know who I am. I found myself at 17 without having to do all the elimination stuff that he's talking about. And I found myself, and I'm not looking back. I already know who I am. That was easy, right? But what he's saying here is really good. He's talking about, hey, if you don't know who you are, you have to eliminate everything around you of who you are not. Sometimes we'll get so distracted with whether it's social media, YouTube, and all these dopamine fixtures. It's almost kind of like what Andrew Huberman will talk about, where he says that addiction is the progressive narrowing of the mind. Sometimes we become so focused on these quick fixes that we lose a piece of ourselves and all these different things that aren't really who we are. And so if we kind of do a little bit of dopamine fasting here and we remove these things from our lives, then we can kind of broaden our horizons and go, oh, what are the things that actually interest me? And I can start moving towards the things that closely relate to who I am, So there is some sense of truth to that. So now we know that Matthew McConaughey is DE over DI. So now that raises the question, is this FE or is this TE? Is this feeling or is this thinking? Now I happen to catch a clip of my buddy Andy Samberg talking about meeting Matthew McConaughey. Let's see how he describes their interaction.
the one time I met Matthew McConaughey, I had just hosted an award show that he was at.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, nice to meet you. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. He's like, I saw you host that thing. You were good. It's like, because you came out and you were like, ah. And then you kind of went, ah. And at the end, you're like, ah.
Hey now, wait a second. What kind of talk is this? This isn't do, done, doing, fix this, therefore that, therefore this kind of talk. This is vibe talk. Now, I always thought that I was TI. And then shortly after getting typed, I went to the mall with a buddy of mine. I was running up and down the shoe aisle, and I couldn't help but notice that the entire time I was just going, I'm communicating in vibes and expressions and emotions. It is written all over my face, and it is written in all of my sounds, even the ones that aren't really saying anything, don't have verbs. You know what I'm saying? So yes, this happens to be more vibe talk. As well, Lewis Howes asked Matthew McConaughey his infamous 3 truths question. So how does Matthew McConaughey answer a thinker question?
And it would be the 3 lessons that you would leave behind to the rest of us, or what I like to call your 3 truths. What would you say would be yours?
Ooh, great question. Let me riff here. Value values. Make sense of humor your default emotion. And remember that you will have thousands of crises in your life, and most of them will never happen.
I don't think I've heard those 3 before. Out of 1,000+ episodes, I don't think I've heard those 3. So those are beautiful.
Okay, so he just turned truths into values. Peachy. And what you are going to see is that this is values on the spectrum. And what that also means is that his ideas are going to be more personal, and you're going to hear a lot more truth talk from Mr. McConaughey. In fact, I caught a good clip of him where he was talking about his process in acting, and he was going, if you have an idea, you don't want to tell the director that. Instead, you want to write it on a little notepad and stick that in your pocket. Then you want to do the scene how your idea was, and then when the director comes over and is going, wow, that idea was so amazing, and you should do this and this and this and that. And he's going, and then you pull it out of your pocket, your little idea, and you're going, I already had all that written down. And it's like, What in the world is this weird personal idea stuff? Like, what do you mean? You're not having the back and forth? You're not pinging the director to see what's a good idea and what's not? It's just, why is this so private and secret? And anyways, whatever. But kind of transitioning over a little bit, Dave did a great Q&A over Matthew McConaughey over the Uvalde tragedy, where Matthew spoke at the White House, and essentially the summary behind it is that he goes sensor by sensor, step by step, going through all the clothing for each children and then delivering an emotional blow at the end so that all the tribe members know what they are to care about. So this is SI and FE, allegedly. Now, if you're typing Matthew McConaughey, it'd be real easy to look at this and go, oh, well, obviously he's FE, or he's Savior Feeling, because he's sharing his expressions. Oh, well, he's very emotional, so obviously he's a feeler, right? Now, when going through the typing process, you really do have to go step by step on these tiny chess moves here. You can't just make these big leaps. And so a better question to ask here is, who cannot do this? Who cannot do what Matthew McConaughey is doing here? Now, guess what? I got a good one for you. Kate McKinnon. Why? Because she went up on stage and she was sharing her values and the people that she cared about, and she blacked out. Now, we know Kate to have feminine FI at the very bottom. So this is going to be an impossibly hard task for her to do something like this. Why? Because not only are her feelings personal, but they're at the very bottom of her stack, and they are feminine. So they are movable. So once she gets hit there, she's gone. She won't be able to hold it together. And so I doubt that she or anyone else of a similar type would be able to do what Matthew's doing here. Okay, well, I also happen to be SF and masculine FI at the very top. So could I do something like this? And you know what? If I was super pre-processed, I probably could do something like this. But there is a fundamental problem here, is that my feelings are introverted, which means that they're attached to my consume and my sleep. So I love downloading this stuff. I love watching all this darkness, but it puts me in a very introverted state. I've been in some debriefings. I've been in some things in the community as well, some of the darkness here. And then as well, I've been in some of the debriefings, like I'm in mental health, and so we'll cover some different crises and end-of-life stuff. And so a lot of it gets very heavy. And I'll notice that for me, with my masculine introverted emotions here, is at first I'll start off being enraged and I'm passionate, I'm ready to get after it, like let's do something about this. And then all of a sudden, as I'm sitting there, as I'm listening, all of a sudden I'm just like, it just completely takes me out because it drags me all the way down to my sleep energy. And then after a while, I'm just going, I'm done, I'm out, I gotta tap out. But what I'll notice with those with extroverted feeling, the FE, is that a lot of them can kind of talk it out. They can kind of express it. They're going, hey, here's some of my emotions. Here's something that I've been through, and I'm sharing this so that we can all be on the same emotional page so I can help you out. Let's have this little back and forth. And it's extroverted, so they can kind of keep talking up. They can ramp up with the emotions rather than for me, I'm kind of like, I'm in a sinkhole and I'm done. And I got to watch myself because it's like an anchor that will just drag me down. So the lesson behind all this is that, yes, anyone could do this, but Matthew McConaughey just demonstrates masterfully what extroverted feeling looks like in a savior state. He just does it so well, and basically a question like this or a situation like this would eliminate who absolutely cannot do this. So now jumping over to the elimination tool, what you are going to see is that Matthew is a standard ISFJ, SI, and FE. Kind of looking at some of his animals here, you are going to see that this is sleep. He does take several years off. He runs off to different countries and no one can find him. He disappears from acting. He is putting on the brakes. He is slowing down and pausing in the conversations. But at the same time, the guy isn't an introvert. He's not all the way on the mopey side of things. He does have some play energy. He is pinging off the tribe. He is ramping up. I think he was doing his audiobook and they're like, hey, you could do it over 3 days. And he was like, let's just knock it out in 8 hours. What's the big deal? So you see that he is exercising a lot of extrovert energy. So jumping over, you are going to see that Matthew McConaughey is a standard ISFJ. He is double activated on the SI and the FE, and so he's going to be a very straightforward type. Now, he does happen to be the same exact type as Joel Osteen, good old brother Joel. Part of me was like really confused by this because I get it. Yeah, okay, they have the same kind of hair. They have the same kind of voice and accent there. But other than that, I was like, Matthew McConaughey is like really cool. You know what I'm saying? He kind of has that vibe about him. Whereas Joel Osteen is more uptight, more just kind of preachy and cringy. And I was like, how are these two the same exact type? So after watching Joel, I was starting to see some of the patterns. Okay, what is Joel Osteen's shtick? Oh, well, my favorite thing to say is I don't know. I just go back to what I do know, which is the Bible and the scriptures. Is that a sin? Well, I just go back to the Bible. He's going back to his known censor, to his known information. I'm not making any guesses. I have to go back to the censor. I have to be grounded in reality, just like Matthew McConaughey with that strong backbone. Huh. Interesting. And I'm also noticing with Matthew and with Joel is that they both kind of have these cringy, preachy, fluffy blaster lessons where they kind of go on these rants and these rambles that don't really make a lot of sense. It's kind of like your third eye and the way that you're looking at it and God and just the life that he has fulfilled for us. And they'll just kind of ramble on without any real basis. I'm like, where are you getting your information from? Where are you citing any sources? Like, Joel, why aren't you quoting any scriptures here? Where are you getting from this? Are these just answers from God streamlining to your head? Are you just talking out of nowhere right now? And so they do happen to have a lot of similarities. And being the same exact type, even though they are a bit different in some ways, they're still the same at their core. They're still doing the same things, just in slightly different ways. So now jumping over to Matthew McConaughey's social type here, he has not received an official diagnosis. So real quick, if I were to give my best guess, how does the guy not have a scam? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's doing acting, but at the same time, he's running away from acting, and he never talks about acting, and then he writes a book, and he doesn't include anything in acting in the book. So, are you really specializing in acting? And he's writing a book, he's launching a tequila company, and he's flirting with running for governor, and he's speaking at the White House. I don't know, this seems a little scammy, bro. What's your little, do you have a shtick, or are you kind of generalizing here? And I'd say he's probably playing more of the generalist. Is he ramping up all the way to the top? I don't know. He's kind of putting on the brakes on being a governor. Maybe he doesn't want to go all the way there just yet. I don't know what that means. He seems more friendly. What do I know, right? So I would say Matthew McConaughey, probably a generalist, but otherwise, I don't know. Probably a 1 or a 2. All right. That was the typing for Matthew McConaughey. I hope that you enjoyed. And if you did, let me know. And if you'd like to see more, leave a suggestion for who you'd like to see next. Otherwise, I'll catch you later.
All right. Hey, just keep on living.
Yeah, what's like I don't think. Do you have a credential?
No.
Matthew McConaughey. He is not Matthew McConaughey. Thank you very much for trying to play the game, but he's not. So,
Yes, sir.
You're not going to be able to go into the stadium in that direction.
This way, sir? Maybe we can come back as Joel. Is there a reservation under Osteen, first name Joel?
Are you Joel Osteen?
Yeah.
Is that the church guy?
The church, yeah. Over there in Lakewood.
Yeah.
Yeah, you been there?
No, I've heard about him.
What do you think about that guy?
No comment.
Handsome, at least?
I guess, yeah.
Thank you.